And next question is a good one, and definitely one that we have heard, which is one that I like hearing because it is the opposite of the conventional dieting mindset, which is great. So the question here is, does the SANE lifestyle require eating all that food? I am 68 years old and just don't eat that much, although I am probably 20 pounds overweight. Is it sufficient just to eat SANE food when I am hungry? So can I say, like, there's like 3 phrases in this question, and all 3 of them are amazing and allow us to not only answer this question, but talk about some really important stuff. I want to just say, actually, the batch of questions that we got this week, you guys and gals, actually mostly gals. So statistically, the SANE family is 100% awesome. And within that awesomeness, it's about 80% female and 20% male. So just some interesting statistics on the SANE family. And if you're curious, actually, and the median age of a SANE family member is right around 50. So in case you're interested, that's the demographic breakdown of the SANE family as of this morning. We did a team exercise about how we can, better tailor our message to individuals, and that was the data we discovered. So anyway, so this individual is one of the wonderful members of the SANE family. Do I have to eat this much food? I'm 68 years old. I don't eat that much. I'm probably 20 pounds overweight. Is it sufficient just to eat SANE food when I'm hungry? So I'd like to go from specific to general, if that's okay. And the specific answer is it sufficient to just eat SANE food when I'm hungry? Absolutely yes. The only caveat, like, I do not want you to ever be uncomfortably full, just like I do not want you to be uncomfortably hungry. Don't want you to be uncomfortable. Unless you're exercising eccentrically, then I want you to be extremely uncomfortable for a very short period of time in a very safe way. We can talk about that separately. So it's a good pain. It's a sort of a good hurt that triggers growth. Anyway, is it sufficient to eat SANE food when I'm hungry? Yes, with the caveat that we do. So this individual also says, I'm 68 years old. I don't eat that much, although I'm probably 20 pounds overweight. So again, this is what led me to dedicate the past 15 years of my life and the rest of my life to this, is individuals who are just like this. And my mother is like this. All the people I worked with 15 years ago when I was a personal trainer were like this, where the reality is they're not eating that much and they're still overweight. I mean, my mother, who is in her I think she might be in her early 70s. Actually, I think she's 68 or 69. She doesn't eat. I mean, she visited me and I'm trying to eat. I'm trying to give her food. She's like, not hungry, not hungry. And she's probably in a similar position to the individual asking a question here in terms of her weight. So how do we explain that, right? It's not, if you're eating 1,000 calories per day, which I can imagine that's probably what my mother eats. She probably eats 1,000 calories per day. One would think that you would be starving on 1,000 calories per day, yet the weight still remains. So that's why SANE exists, to get to the root of this problem. And the root of this problem is we do need to heal some dysregulation. The technical term for it is metabolic dysregulation. And it's caused by a lifetime of stress and yo-yo dieting and insane dietary recommendations that have been put upon us, which trigger our brain and our hormones in our gut to regulate our weight inappropriately, such that if we're eating only 1,000 calories, we can still be 20 pounds overweight. So is it sufficient to just eat SANE food when I'm hungry? Yes, if you're getting the requisite amount of non-starchy vegetables. So that is the non-starchy vegetables are key, because otherwise we're not healing. And we have to have that. This is a mindset shift here, which is, like, in and of itself, the following mindset shift can save your life, literally. SANE food is therapeutic. Like, think of it as nutritional therapy. Okay. We need that. The conventional dieting approach is to just take in less food, right? But if food is therapy, if food is medicine, which it is, then taking in more of the right types of food is therapeutic. So we do need to go out of our way to make sure we're getting those double-digit servings of vegetables. And if you just don't have room for them, smoothies are very helpful. And then if at all possible, if you just can't do smoothies, you can do the powdered superfoods available in the SANE store, such as Garden in My Glass. If you don't want to do that, now please make sure you listen to the entire thing I'm about to say next, because the first part of it, if taken out of context, is completely insane. If you can't do smoothies because the fiber fills you up too much, and you don't want to do the powdered superfoods, which are whole foods, then if they are using only green leafy vegetables, juicing can be helpful, because you are going to still get a lot of the vitamins and minerals from things like kale, spinach, Swiss chard, arugula, so on and so forth. But it's not going to fill you up at all because there's no fiber. However, again, the only context, the only reason I would ever recommend juicing is if it's 100% green leafy vegetables, and 2, if it's impossible for you to take in enough vegetables through whole food vegetables. And remember, whole food vegetables, smoothies are whole food vegetables. You're taking the whole food and you're blending it up. That could be helpful. And then, of course, the protein. The protein is really essential, especially if you're 68 years old. I want to make sure that you are maintaining your lean muscle tissue. It's important for all of us, but it's especially important once we've hit menopause and andropause for men and beyond. Extremely important. So again, if you're always full, really just try to focus. Don't be uncomfortably full, but do know that those vegetables are really, really important, and do know that that protein is really important. So if you have to go with like the whey protein or the clean rice protein or the clean pea protein to do a liquid feeding, that is important, simply because, if what you're doing is I'm just going to continue to eat when I'm hungry, I'm going to stop when I'm full, and I don't eat very much, and I'm still 20 pounds overweight. Well, what that's telling me is that we need to do more to heal your metabolism. And the only way we can do that is to increase the quality of that limited quantity of food that you're consuming. And that's why then those vegetables and that protein become so important, because those are the essential components of a sane lifestyle. And, as long as you're eating at least 1,200 calories per day, which I hope you are, especially if you're only 20 pounds overweight, getting the sufficient vegetables and protein should be easy. But just like after someone has gastric bypass surgery, for example, it is essential to, like, if someone has gastric bypass surgery, right, their stomach is tiny, so they can't eat a lot. And if they don't eat extremely sane, like if they don't eat optimally sane, they can die from nutrient deficiencies. It happens every single year. People go and get a gastric bypass surgery done, or any sort of gastric surgery, and then they don't modify the quality of their eating, and then they come down with nutrient deficiencies. I even had a personal friend that had a gastric bypass surgery and then had to have it reversed, and it like totally destroyed her life. Anyway, if you cannot eat a lot of food, it's okay, but then it's really important that the food that you do eat is extremely sane. And can I just say how much I love questions like these, because the mindset of, hey, not only am I eating a lot of food and not gaining weight, but I'm eating a lot of food and it's helping me lose weight. And in fact, I can't eat all this food and I'm losing weight. How much different of a mindset and a dynamic is that? Food is therapy. More of it is better. I love that. So thank you for the fabulous question here. Hopefully that was helpful. All right, here we got some questions coming in. I see the big red question marks, so I'm gonna go ahead and take a look at that. All right, Janet, and I think that's Janet. If it's Jeanette, just smack me, but I think it's Janet. I'm getting ready. Oh, by the way, there's some things about me that, like, reading sometimes is kind of hard for me. Not that I can't read, but like it's like Janet versus Jeanette. You wouldn't think it'd be hard for me to tell the difference, but sometimes it is. Okay, I'm getting ready to take my family on a cruise. So what do they do, and who do we tell we're pre-diabetic? So oftentimes, I don't know, we usually book ours through Costco because we love Costco, as you know from everything I say always. And I know I do not own stock or anything in Costco. is just usually you make, reservations for dinner or whatever. You can just tell them, hey, I'm pre-diabetic. So anything, like starches and sugars, I'd be very careful about. You can also tell them I'm lactose intolerant. That's very helpful too, because it will oftentimes, not that there's anything wrong with cooking with butter at home, but sometimes in restaurants and such, they just do things right. Restaurant is in the business of making their food as delicious as possible. So it's not that butter's bad, but it's that the restaurant is just going to indiscriminately use butter and cooking oils. So, just tell, usually at the front desk on the cruise. And then, of course, when you're at the buffets, which, of course, there is an abundance of on a cruise, I mean, you're in total control there, which is excellent. And, you really get your money's worth, because when you go on a cruise or you go to any buffet, you'll notice they always put the insane stuff front and center, right? Because that's the stuff that's really cheap for them to make. So they want you to really fill up on all that bread and that rice and that pasta and those sweets. But you're going to go right head over to the seafood and the delicious meats and the vegetables and all that kind of fun stuff, and really just enjoy a lot of that because it's delicious and awesome. I love cruises. I love all you can eat buffets because it just proves that you could, they say you go on a cruise and you gain 5 pounds. Not the case. If you go SANE, you go on a cruise, you have a great time and you feel great and you enjoy a lot of really yummy food. So hopefully it is helpful, and hopefully you have a great time on your cruise. Bobby's got a question here. Bobby, what's up, Bobby? Hey, Jonathan, could you talk a bit about what modification one needs to do to SANE eating if they are dealing with metabolic syndrome? I am wanting to reverse it, but the best way. I'm 46 if it makes a difference. So the good news is, so I used a term earlier called metabolic dysregulation. That is a synonym for a metabolic syndrome, or sometimes I know in European countries, they sometimes call it syndrome X. So there is not, the good news, Bobby, is there are no modifications you need to make to SANE eating to deal with metabolic syndrome, because SANE eating, metabolic syndrome is a constellation of metabolic issues, which usually happen at the same time or frequently at the same time, and they all have the same cause. That's why they happen in clusters or in constellations, as research papers like to say. And the solution is, the only modification I would say is in any context in which we are trying to treat a medical condition. So if we're trying to, for example, manage diabetes, or, get to a point where we're on diabetes medication, but we want to drop our A1C levels such that our primary care physician someday might take us off that medication, which has happened countless times for individuals in the SANE family, which is amazing. Same kind of thing with cholesterol medication or heart medication, any kind of medication, hypertension, so on and so forth. Is in a SANE lifestyle, we know that it's very flexible, and we say, look, progress rather than perfection. And we say, go at your own pace. If you want to eat insanely sometimes and eat sanely sometimes, that's totally cool. But just like with anything else in life, the more you put into it, the more you get out of it. If you really want to, grab that metabolic syndrome, by the hand and shove it out the door. Same thing with diabetes, same thing with hypertension, same thing with risk for cancer and all that kind of stuff. The only modification is, I would say, treat your SANE lifestyle like a medical intervention, rather than like as something that, like my mom's approach to sanity. My mom's approach to sanity is fantastic for her. She does not have any severe medical conditions. She's fine with her energy levels. She's fine with her physical appearance. So she says, I like to live saner. So I eat more sanely than I did in the past, but sometimes she eats Cheetos because she loves Cheetos. And she's like, the value I derive from eating Cheetos is outweighs any costs that I have experienced to date. And that's totally fine. However, if my mom got diagnosed with metabolic syndrome and she was like, Jonathan, what modifications do I need to make to my approach to get rid of this metabolic syndrome? I would say, Mom, if you want to get rid of a medical condition, we need to treat this like a medical condition, right? Like, we're going to do some nutritional surgery on your body. So we're going to take it very seriously. So we're going to focus on the most nutrient dense of the vegetables, the deep green leafy vegetables. We're going to focus on the most nutrient dense proteins. So we are going to try to eat organ meats, even though that sounds weird. I mean, it doesn't sound any weirder than cracking open our chest and doing open heart surgery, right? So we want to avoid that. So we might do some things that seem a little strange. Like we might eat some liver. We might figure out a way to cook liver with onions in a way that's delicious. You know, we might eat more oysters and clams, mollusks, things that I'm not going to get on Good Morning America and be like, hey, America, go do this, because America would be like, oh, that's crazy. But, you know, again, is it any more crazy than, you know, having to get a colonoscopy? Like, that's not that that's crazy, but if I were to describe that medical procedure, you know, it sure seems a little bit more extreme than eating some oysters, right? So I would just say the modifications are just that. You're going to want to optimize your sanity, because you're going to want to approach this with the mindset of course, it's all about progress rather than perfection. Generally, in this specific case, if you want to reverse a medical condition, we're going to treat it like therapy. We're going to treat it like a medical intervention, and we're going to give it that level of priority. So hopefully that is helpful there. And let's see, Linnell, what modifications are needed for low thyroid? And Janet said smack. So hopefully that is a smack of the hand rather than a smack of the face or a smack of the posterior. All right, Linnell, what modifications are needed for low thyroid? So Linnell, the biggest thing for low thyroid is going to be, again, so two things. One, if you are not exercising smarter, that is extremely important, because chronic, moderate intensity, high impact exercise such as jogging absolutely can cause thyroid havoc, especially in females. So like chronic jogging, things like that. I mean, we just have to understand that any kind of physical activity we do, right? If we take up boxing as a hobby, right, it's going to give us exercise, but there are going to be some side effects, and the side effects include head trauma. If we're going to run long distances, you know, yes, that is going to exercise our heart a bit, but it's also going to suppress thyroid levels. Like it just does. It's a fact. So strength training, smarter exercise is going to help with the thyroid levels. The other thing is, I would say, is there are some specific superfoods that do help with thyroid health for sure. And sea vegetables. Most people don't see, what is this guy talking about? Sea vegetables? What are you, what? But no, things like seaweed and kelp, which you're like, oh, wonderful, Jonathan. Well, next time I go out to eat, I'm just going to get seaweed. Like, how do I do that? So a perfect example of, where the SANE store comes in handy. We do, because personally, I have not yet been to a grocery store that sells kelp, or specifically rockwood kelp, which is some of the most iodine-rich kelp on the planet. Supplementing your diet with sea vegetables. If you can find them at your grocery store, rock and roll. If you can't find them at your grocery store, we have them in the purest form, and we've powdered them for you in the SANE store. Rockwood kelp is my favorite. There's also bladderwrack seaweed powder, which taste as good as they sound, right? But see, that's what I just want to be transparent. Like, hopefully the love that the SANE family has for its members is clear, in the sense that, like, look, we will provide food that tastes terrible, right? I'm going to tell you right now, powdered seaweed does not taste good, because it doesn't taste good, right? Some things in life don't taste, it's medicine. It's food as medicine. So I'm not going to go in there and have, a formulation that contains a bunch of other nonsense in it, because if you want to eat something that tastes good, we can do that separately. I want these SANE superfoods to do their job, and I don't want to fill them with a bunch of other nonsense. So anyway, it's kind of a little side note there, but I don't know too many other people out there who are like, look, I'm gonna provide you with something that I openly will tell you tastes disgusting, but works really, really, really well, because the goal is to heal you not to delight your taste buds. Now, we do have some things that will delight your taste buds, but I'm confident that with the over 1,400 SANE recipes you've got there, there's plenty of ways to delight your taste buds. Here, we're trying to heal your thyroid, so I want to make sure that you can get some sea vegetables. So kelp and seaweed, very high in iodine, and it's not an iodine supplement. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I'm not a huge fan of supplements. I'm a huge fan of, like, if you want to supplement your diet with iodine, what we need to do is find foods that are extremely high in iodine, and we need to eat more of those whole foods, personally. And then, Linnell, do I need to cook? Do I need to make use? I cook my greens for low thyroid. Yes. So whatever, I mean, I personally, yes. I mean, there's oxalate issues, so on and so forth. If it kind of depends on your results here, Linnell, because I mean, there's pluses and minuses to both. I would work with my recommendation is going to be eat a lot of vegetables, eat a lot of sea vegetables, work with your primary care physician to see your progress. In general, we should not be eating all raw vegetables or all cooked vegetables. We should be getting a little bit of both, because cooking does some positive things to vegetables. It also does some negative things to vegetables. So a little bit like we hear about when it comes to financial stuff, we want to diversify. Same kind of thing here. When it comes to the foods we're eating, we want to diversify, right? Eating 6 servings of spinach is not as good for you as eating 1 serving of 6 different green vegetables. Even if some of those green vegetables, like romaine lettuce, are objectively less nutrient dense than spinach. They have different nutrients, so we want to diversify. Same thing with preparation. We don't want to eat just raw vegetables, because cooking does have some advantages, like, for example, with tomatoes and blah, 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 blah. So want to diversify both in our preparation and in the types of foods we're eating to maximize our nutrient absorption. So hopefully that is helpful. All right, next question. I want to do one of the ones that are written in, if that is cool. What is your opinion on intermittent fasting to help control insulin levels and weight? Thank you for this question. It is a great one, because there was actually quite a bit of chat this week on the support group, which I love. If you're not in there, please get in there, because it is awesome. 2 things, and a lot of talk about insulin. There we go. So let's just be like, 1, insulin is a great example of how quickly the nutritional dialogue can change, because right up until about 15 years ago, I mean, like the 1990s, right, it was all about Weight Watchers, right? Weight Watchers was like growing in revenue, and everyone was like, counting calories is a good idea. And now, I mean, of course it's been 25 years since the 90s. Can you believe that? 25. Like, there are adults that were born in the 90s. What? That doesn't make any sense, but no, I digress. But now everyone's like, insulin. Everyone knows insulin. My 15-year-old nephew knows about insulin. And insulin has a really negative stigma associated with it. And let's be very clear. Insulin is not bad any more than estrogen is bad, or cortisol is bad, or testosterone is bad, or ghrelin is bad, or any other hormone is bad. These things are not bad. In fact, insulin is a great example, because if you could imagine, based on the way it's portrayed in the media, and especially on the internet, which is always a fun place to get nutrition information, if someone said, hey, I can wave a magic wand and I could reduce your insulin levels to 0, I think a lot of us would think that's great. Insulin is bad. So if someone did that, if they waved a magic wand and made your insulin levels 0, they have a name for that. It's called type 1 diabetes. Type 1 diabetics don't produce insulin. And that's why up until insulin therapy was discovered and awarded a Nobel Prize, babies would just die of starvation because they had no insulin that would allow them to get energy into their cells. So insulin is not bad, right? So this is just like cholesterol is not bad, right? Like, your body produces LDL cholesterol, the bad cholesterol, to patch up inflammation on your arterial lining. So in that context, don't worry, I'll come back to insulin. In that context, saying LDL cholesterol is bad is a little bit like saying there's a house on fire over there and there's a bunch of firefighters over there. So what we need to do is like, oh my gosh, like where there are the problem is there's too many firefighters. We need to reduce the firefighter level. Like the firefighters are not the problem. In fact, the firefighters are there to try to help an objectively negative situation. A house is on fire. The issue is not that there's too many firefighters. The issue is that the house is burning down. And I know you're like, John, of course. But that is exactly what's happening with cholesterol in your arterial lining. Your arterial walls are on fire. They're inflamed. And LDL cholesterol comes and sticks to them to patch them up. And then once they're healed, HDL, this is an oversimplification, but then HDL comes along, grabs the LDL molecules and recycles them. That's why they say HDL is the good cholesterol and LDL is the bad cholesterol. But you can see that that is false, because LDL is just doing what it's supposed to do. It's patching up holes or inflammation on your arterial lining. Now, of course, there are things called VLDL, which is very low, very small LDL particles, which can get stuck, blah, 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 blah. Cholesterol isn't bad. Cholesterol is created for many purposes throughout the body. Dropping cholesterol levels too low is showing to be correlated with cognitive dysfunction because you need cholesterol for your brain to function. So same thing with insulin, right? Like, bad things happen with our cholesterol levels when we eat non-food, insane food products, which causes our arterial lining to become inflamed, which causes a huge amount of LDL to get produced because we have a huge amount of inflammation that the LDL needs to go address. The LDL is not the problem. The LDL is the body's proposed solution to patch up the damage caused by insane eating. And of course, if that patching becomes too big, it blocks the artery. But the problem isn't the patching. The problem is the thing that caused it to get patched, needed to get patched in the first place, which is the insane food. The same thing happens with insulin. Like, insulin is great. Insulin is the key that allows your cells to use sugar. And your cells need to be able to use sugar to fuel themselves. If we don't have insulin, we're type 1 diabetic. Insulin is not bad. What is bad is non-food that spikes the heck out of our insulin levels. So the goal is not to demonize insulin. Insulin is key. We have to have insulin or we will die. The goal is to keep insulin at natural levels. And the way we keep insulin at natural levels is to eat sanely. Now, the reason I kind of went on this rant is because this is a great question. Like, should I intermittently fast to control insulin levels? My question about intermittent fasting is intermittent fasting, I would argue in some contexts, is a euphemism for eating less, right? It's a way that people on the internet that say they're focused on food quality can promulgate eating less. They don't say eat less. They just say don't eat for 16 hours. And then they call it intermittent fasting. Now, there are health benefits to intermittent fasting. Things like autophagy and recycling cells and blah, 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 blah. But I personally would not recommend intermittent fasting as a way to help control insulin levels. The way you control insulin levels is not eating less any more than the way you control by way of analogy. And to be clear, I'm not at all criticizing. This is a fantastic question. And the fact it's the awesomeness of the question that's causing me to get amped up because I think it could be so helpful for people. So thank you. This is like a great, great, great question. But intermittent fasting, being told, because I'm sure someone told you this, being told to intermittent fast to control insulin levels, AKA being told to eat less to control insulin, to reduce insulin, is a little bit like being told to like water your garden less to get rid of weeds. Like, yes, watering your garden less will get rid of weeds, but the problem isn't that you're watering your garden too much. The problem is that there's weeds. And the issue, like, how do we get rid of the weeds without kind of killing everything? Intermittent fasting is just saying don't eat anything. And of course, if we don't eat anything, we're going to bring our insulin levels down, but that's not sustainable. What we want to do is we want to focus on eating foods that don't spike the heck out of our insulin